Are you aware that adding a new character is the most dangerous move a sitcom can make? TV shows do it all the time hoping to get more viewers, but it often backfires spectacularly. We are going to count down the guest appearances that fans despise. Stick around to learn which show hired a replacement character that even the cast could not stand. 1. Cousin Oliver on The Brady Bunch.
No, I'm real good at ketchup. You gotta hit the bottom real hard, like this.
Let's start with the king of all sitcom spoilers, the original shark jumper himself, Cousin Oliver. For 5 seasons, The Brady Bunch was a simple, wholesome show about a lovely lady, a man named Brady, and their 6 kids. By 1974, though, the show was getting a little old. The Brady kids were not so little anymore. They were teenagers dealing with high school crushes and driving lessons. The producers got nervous. They thought the show was losing its cute factor. So they made a classic, desperate move. They brought in a new, younger kid. Enter Cousin Oliver, played by child actor Robbie Rist. He was Carol Brady's nephew, who was sent to live with the family for reasons. He was small, he had glasses, and he was supposed to be adorable. But he was not. He was clumsy, annoying, and totally unnecessary. Fans hated him instantly. He had zero chemistry with the rest of the cast and felt completely forced into every storyline. His appearance in the final 6 episodes of the series is now famously known as the moment the Brady Bunch officially lost its magic. The show was canceled shortly after he arrived, and a legend was born. From that point on, anytime a show adds a new, young character to try and save itself, they call it the Cousin Oliver syndrome. Adding a cute kid is a classic mistake, but our next entry proves that adding a cool older guy can be just as deadly, especially when he has to fill the shoes of a TV icon. 2. Ted McGinley as Roger Phillips on Happy Days.
You two know each other?
You two know each other? You two know each other.
If Cousin Oliver is the warning sign, Ted McGinley is the Grim Reaper of sitcoms. This actor has a legendary reputation for joining shows right before they get canceled. His reign of terror began on the classic show Happy Days. For years, Happy Days was the coolest show on TV, all thanks to Fonzie. But by the 8th season, the show was running on fumes. Ron Howard, who played Richie Cunningham, had left the show. The writers needed a new cool guy to hang out with the Fonz. Their answer was Roger Phillips, a coach and teacher at Jefferson High, played by Ted McGinley. The problem was, nobody can replace Richie Cunningham. Roger was a bland, boring character. He was supposed to be the new sensible friend for Fonzie, but he had none of the charm that made Richie so beloved. He felt like a cheap copy, a walking, talking sign that the show's best days were behind it. While Happy Days did limp on for a few more seasons, many fans point to Roger's arrival as the true end of the show's golden era. It was the moment the show went from a cultural phenomenon to just another sitcom clinging to life. McGinley's career as a show killer was just beginning, but his work on Happy Days set the standard. Replacing a beloved main character is tough. But what happens when a show does not even try to explain it and just brings in a new character to fill a void left by 2 departing stars? Our next show did exactly that, and fans were not fooled. 3. Leanna Creel as Tori Scott on Saved by the Bell.
Let me explain something. I'm Zach Morris.
Should I be impressed?
Saved by the Bell was the ultimate Saturday morning show for kids in the 90s. We all knew the gang at Bayside High: Zach, Slater, Screech, Lisa, Kelly, and Jesse. They were an inseparable group. So imagine the shock when fans tuned in for the final season and 2 of them were just gone. For a block of episodes in the last season, Kelly Kapowski and Jesse Spano completely disappeared. There was no explanation, no goodbye, nothing. In their place was a new girl named Tori Scott, played by Leanna Creel. Tori was a tough, leather jacket-wearing biker chick who was supposed to be a new love interest for Zach Morris. The problem was, nobody asked for Tori. Fans were confused and angry. Where were Kelly and Jesse? The show never said a word. The Tori episodes felt like they were from a different, worse version of the show. She had no connection to the group's history, and her tough girl act felt completely out of place at the bubbly Bayside High. Then, just as suddenly as she appeared, Tori was gone, and Kelly and Jesse were back for the graduation episode, as if nothing happened. It was a bizarre and clumsy move that left a permanent stain on an otherwise beloved series. A mysterious replacement is one thing, but what about a replacement for the world's best boss? Our next guest star had the impossible job of taking over for a comedy legend, and it was a total disaster. 4. Will Ferrell as D'Angelo Vickers on The Office.
I can't.
Say it.
Stop hitting me.
You can do it, just say it.
Hit me again.
For 7 seasons, Michael Scott was the heart and soul of The Office. Steve Carell's portrayal of the bumbling, lovable, and often clueless boss of Dunder Mifflin was pure comedic genius. When Carell announced he was leaving the show, fans were devastated. The big question was, who could possibly replace him? The show's answer was a 4-episode guest spot by comedy superstar Will Ferrell. He played D'Angelo Vickers, the man hired to take over as regional manager. On paper, it sounded perfect. Will Ferrell is one of the funniest people on the planet. But in reality, it was a train wreck. Ferrell's style of comedy is loud, absurd, and over the top. It completely clashed with the subtle, awkward, and realistic humor of The Office. D'Angelo was not a character. He was just Will Ferrell doing his Will Ferrell thing. He juggled invisible balls, screamed about cake, and had a weird obsession with the American Southwest. It felt like he was in a completely different show. His character was obnoxious, unfunny, and deeply unlikable. Instead of easing the pain of Michael Scott's departure, D'Angelo Vickers just made everyone miss him even more. A bad replacement can ruin the end of a show, but a bad love interest can ruin a show's most important relationship, which is exactly what our next guest star did. 5. Luke Wilson as Casey Kelso on That 70s Show.
I learned something in the Army. When things are tough, turn up the music and crack open another beer.
For most of its run, That 70s Show revolved around the sweet on-again, off-again romance between Eric Foreman and Donna Pinciotti. They were the show's central couple, the emotional core that fans were rooting for. Then, in Season 4, the writers decided to throw a wrench in the works. That wrench was named Casey Kelso, played by actor Luke Wilson. Casey was the older, cooler, and supposedly more handsome brother of the dim-witted Michael Kelso. He swooped into town and immediately caught Donna's eye. Fans were not happy. Casey was arrogant, lazy, and treated Donna poorly. He was everything Eric was not. The storyline where Donna dumps good guy Eric for this new, slick jerk felt like a betrayal of her character. It was a classic sitcom trope meant to create drama, but it just made viewers angry. Luke Wilson did what he could with the role, but the character was designed to be hated. He broke up the show's favorite couple and pushed the story in a frustrating direction. His time on the show was short, but the damage was done. For many, the Casey Kelso arc was the first sign that the show was starting to run out of good ideas. Breaking up a beloved couple is a cardinal sin of sitcoms. But sometimes a guest character does not need to do anything dramatic to be annoying. Sometimes their whole purpose is just one single, cringy joke. 6. Denise Richards as Cassie Geller on Friends.
Yeah.
Friends was a master of the celebrity guest spot. Big names like Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, and Bruce Willis all had memorable and hilarious roles. But not every cameo was a home run. In Season 7, the show introduced a character that was based on a single, awkward joke. That character was Cassie Geller, Ross and Monica's cousin, played by Denise Richards. She comes to visit for a few days and needs a place to stay. The whole joke was that she was incredibly, distractingly beautiful. So beautiful, in fact, that every man who saw her, including her own cousins, was mesmerized. The episode's plot revolved around Chandler staring at her, Ross trying to make a move on her, and Phoebe being weirdly attracted to her. The entire thing felt uncomfortable and lazy. Denise Richards is a talented actress, but her character was given nothing to do except be pretty and swing her hair around in slow motion. It was a one-note gag that was not funny the first time, and it just got more cringy as the episode went on. It was a rare misfire for a show that usually got its guest stars so right. A one-note character is bad enough. But what about a recurring guest star who is so annoying every time she shows up that you want to change the channel? Our next entry is a perfect example of that. 7. Elizabeth Banks as Sal on Modern Family.
His name is Tony. I met him 3 months ago. He's the greatest guy ever. And seriously, are you guys okay with this?
Of course, why wouldn't we be?
Well, because I can get married and you guys can't.
Modern Family was a show about the loving, chaotic, and hilarious interactions between the different branches of the Pritchett-Dunphy-Tucker clan. A huge part of the show's charm came from the main cast's amazing chemistry. But every now and then, they would introduce a side character who just threw a wrench in the works. The worst offender was easily Sal, Cam, and Mitch's hard-partying, irresponsible friend, played by the usually wonderful Elizabeth Banks. Sal was supposed to be the wild friend who reminded the two new dads of their fun-loving past. But in reality, she was just obnoxious. Every time she appeared, she was loud, self-centered, and made terrible decisions. She ruined birthdays, got inappropriately drunk at parties, and was generally a terrible person. The joke was supposed to be that Cam and Mitch loved her anyway, but it was impossible for the audience to see why. She never had a single redeeming quality. Elizabeth Banks is a great comedic actress, but not even she could make Sal likable. Her recurring appearances felt like a punishment, an unwelcome interruption to a show that was so much better without her. Human guest stars can be bad. But what if the guest star who ruined the show was not even human? Our next entry is about a tiny green alien that nearly destroyed a beloved cartoon classic. 8. The Great Gazoo on the Flintstones.
I am the Great Gazoo, the former headmaster scientist on planet Zatox.
The witch on what?
For its first 5 seasons, The Flintstones was a simple and brilliant show. It was a classic family sitcom just set in the Stone Age. You had Fred and Wilma, their neighbors Barney and Betty, and their prehistoric world filled with dinosaur-powered appliances and rock puns. It was perfect. Then, in the final season, the show's creators made one of the strangest decisions in television history. They introduced a character from outer space. His name was the Great Gazoo. He was a tiny, green, floating alien in a flying saucer who had been exiled to Earth. Only Fred, Barney, and the kids could see him. He had magical powers, could stop time, and constantly referred to Fred and Barney as dum-dums. He was supposed to add a new, magical element to the show. Instead, he ruined it completely. Gazoo's futuristic powers and condescending attitude did not fit the simple, Stone Age vibe of the show at all. He felt like he had wandered in from a completely different cartoon. His appearance is widely considered the moment the Flintstones jumped the shark. The show was canceled at the end of that season, and the Great Gazoo went down in history as one of the weirdest and worst characters ever created. An alien invader is one thing. But what about a human character who takes the place of a show's quirky and beloved star? The next guest star had a tough job, and many fans think she failed. 9. Megan Fox as Reagan on New Girl.
I am freaking out, Reagan, because you're trying to steal my fiance.
No, I'm not.
What are you talking about now?
Everybody knows.
The entire premise of New Girl rested on the adorable, quirky, and slightly unhinged personality of Jess, played by Zooey Deschanel. Her chemistry with her three male roommates, Nick, Schmidt, and Winston, was the engine that powered the whole show. So when Zooey Deschanel had to take a leave of absence to have a baby in season 5, the show was in a tough spot. How do you do New Girl without the new girl? Their solution was to bring in a temporary new roommate, a pharmaceutical rep named Reagan, played by superstar Megan Fox. On paper, Reagan was the opposite of Jess. She was serious, cynical, and emotionally distant. The writers hoped this contrast would create new and funny situations. For some fans, it worked, but for many others, it was a disaster. Megan Fox's deadpan delivery and her character's total lack of silliness felt out of place in the zany world of The Loft. The show's warm, goofy energy was replaced by a colder, more sarcastic vibe. Reagan even started a romance with Nick, which felt like a betrayal to the long-brewing Nick and Jess storyline. When Jess finally returned, it was a huge relief for a large part of the audience who felt that the Reagan experiment just did not work. Trying to replace a show's star is a recipe for disaster. But sometimes a single guest appearance is so grating that it can ruin what should have been a classic episode of an iconic show. 10. Kathy Griffin as Sally Weaver on Seinfeld.
I stink, you stink. It's showbiz, everybody stinks.
Yeah, you've been sticking since the 80s.
All right.
Seinfeld was famous for its cast of bizarre and unlikable side characters. But there is a difference between being funny unlikable and just plain annoying. Comedian Kathy Griffin's character, Sally Weaver, fell firmly into the second category. She first appeared in an episode as a former colleague of Susan Ross, George's late fiancée. She is an aspiring actress and comedian who constantly pesters Jerry, asking for favors and career advice. Her character was grating and pathetic, but it did not stop there. The writers, for some reason, decided to bring her back and dedicate an entire episode to her, titled The Cartoon. In it, Sally puts on a one-woman show called Jerry Seinfeld is the Devil, where she just complains about him on stage. The episode was a rare miss for Seinfeld. Sally was not a funny or interesting character, and spending a whole half hour on her felt like a waste of time. Kathy Griffin is a talented comedian, but her performance as Sally was just nails on a chalkboard. It was one of the few times that a Seinfeld guest character was not just morally bankrupt, but also boring. A comedian playing an unfunny comedian is bad. But what about a pop music superstar trying to act on a beloved sitcom? The next celebrity cameo felt more like a commercial than a character. 11. Jennifer Lopez as Anita Appleby on How I Met Your Mother.
That's why the book says never sleep with a guy on the first date.
Totally.
Or the second date.
Of course.
Or the third date.
Well.
Or the fourth date.
Well, just tell me how many dates.
17.
How I Met Your Mother had its fair share of celebrity guest stars, from Britney Spears to Enrique Iglesias. Some worked better than others. One of the most glaring examples of a stunt cast gone wrong was when superstar Jennifer Lopez appeared in a season 5 episode. She played Anita Appleby, a self-help author who writes books, telling women how to train men by withholding intimacy. Barney, of course, sees this as the ultimate challenge and sets out to conquer her. The problem was, Jennifer Lopez was not really playing a character. She was just playing Jennifer Lopez. The whole episode felt like an excuse to have a huge celebrity on the show. Her performance was stiff, and she had very little comedic chemistry with the rest of the cast. The storyline was weak and predictable, relying entirely on the audience being wowed by the presence of J.Lo. Instead, it just felt forced and out of place. It was a clear case of putting a big name ahead of a good story, and the episode suffered for it. It was a forgettable guest spot on a show that usually handled its cameos with a lot more cleverness. Stunt casting a pop star is risky, but what about casting a future Hollywood megastar before he was famous, in a desperate attempt to save a show? Our next actor is an icon now, but his first big role was on a sinking ship. 12. Leonardo DiCaprio as Luke Brower on Growing Pains.
No, I was raised Presbyterian. That's a boat race. Well, looking at you makes my heart race.
By its 7th and final season, the family sitcom Growing Pains was definitely showing its age. The Seaver kids were all grown up, and the storylines were getting stale. In a move that screamed desperation, the producers decided to inject some new blood into the cast. They brought in a young, relatively unknown teenager to play a homeless boy named Luke Brower, who the Seaver family takes in. That young actor was none other than Leonardo DiCaprio. Yes, before he was the king of the world in Titanic, Leo was a troubled kid on a dying sitcom. The problem was not his acting. Even back then, you could see he had talent. The problem was his character. Luke was a gritty, serious character who did not fit the light, goofy tone of Growing Pains. His storylines about living on the street felt way too heavy for a show that usually dealt with homework and dating. It was a classic Cousin Oliver situation, but instead of being cute, the new kid was just kind of a downer. The addition of Luke did nothing to save the show, which was canceled at the end of the season. It's a bizarre footnote in the career of one of the world's biggest movie stars. Adding a gritty character to a family show is weird, but sending the whole cast to another country for a multi-episode story arc can be even weirder, especially when it centers on an annoying new love interest. 13. Alex Meneses as Stefania on Everybody Loves Raymond.
What's wrong, Berto?
Nothing. It's just, there's your tummy.
For most of its 9 seasons, Everybody Loves Raymond stayed grounded in its hilarious, relatable world of family drama in Long Island. But in Season 5, the show took a huge swing. They sent the entire Barone family to Italy for a 2-part vacation episode. While the change of scenery was interesting, the storyline it introduced was not. In Italy, Robert meets a beautiful and bubbly local woman named Stefania, played by Alex Meneses. Robert is instantly smitten, and Stefania and her father follow the family back to America. What followed was a long, dragged-out storyline where Robert dated this woman who barely spoke English. The character of Stefania was a collection of Italian stereotypes. She was loud, passionate, and mostly just shouted, "Roberto," over and over again. Her giant, overbearing father was even worse. The whole plotline felt silly and unrealistic, a huge departure from the show's usually clever writing. It took Robert, one of the show's best characters, and stuck him in a dead-end romance that nobody was invested in. It was a relief for most fans when Stefania finally went back to Italy for good. A stereotypical character can drag a show down. But our next character was not just a stereotype. She was part of a shift that made a popular sitcom feel dumb and cheap. 14. April Bowlby as Candy on 2.5 Men.
You know anything about geometry?
Well, I know it's what you say when you turn into a tree. Get it? I'm a tree.
In its early seasons, 2.5 Men was a genuinely witty and well-written sitcom. The humor came from the smart, cynical banter between the 2 Harper brothers, Charlie and Alan. But as the show went on, it started to rely less on clever jokes and more on easy, cheap gags. No character represents this decline better than Candy, the young, clueless, and stunningly dim-witted actress played by April Bowlby. Candy was introduced as a girlfriend for Charlie, but then ended up in a relationship with, and even briefly married to, Alan. The character had one joke. She was really, really dumb. Every line she had was about her not understanding something simple. While she was sweet, the character was a lazy stereotype. She was a sign that the show was no longer interested in writing smart female characters like Rose or Judith. Instead, it was just easier to write dumb blonde jokes. April Bowlby did her best with the material, but Candy was a symbol of the show's creative slide. She was a popular character at the time, but in hindsight, She marks the point where Two and a Half Men started to get a lot less clever. A dumb character is one thing, but what about a character who is so bizarrely intense and creepy that he makes everyone, both on screen and in the audience, deeply uncomfortable? 15. James Spader as Robert California on The Office.
Baby sat up slowly, turned to Mother, and said, "I'm fine, bitch. I'm fine."
After the Will Ferrell experiment failed, The Office still needed a new boss to replace Michael Scott. The show's solution for Season 8 was Robert California, a mysterious and intensely weird CEO played by the legendary James Spader. Robert interviews for the regional manager job, somehow convinces corporate to give him the CEO position instead, and then spends the rest of the season lurking around the office, making everyone feel uneasy. Robert California was not a character. He was a walking enigma. He spoke in strange philosophical riddles and had a creepy, hypnotic stare. He would talk to the employees about their deepest fears and desires in a way that was meant to be funny, but often just came across as unsettling. James Spader is a fantastic actor, but his powerful, dramatic energy was a bizarre fit for the low-key world of The Office. Some fans found him fascinating and hilarious. Many others found him insufferable. He changed the entire tone of the show, making it darker and stranger. The Robert California season felt like a completely different show, and for a lot of viewers, it was not a show they wanted to watch. A creepy boss is a bold choice. But sometimes a show can go wrong by adding a character who is just too normal and totally boring for the world she is in. 16. Eliza Dushku as Agent Page on The Big Bang Theory.
Dr. Cooper.
Yes?
I'm Special Agent Page, FBI.
The Big Bang Theory was a show about a group of brilliant but socially awkward nerds. The comedy came from their weird hobbies, their super genius conversations, and their inability to act normal in everyday situations. It was a silly, goofy world. That is why it was so strange when, in Season 4, the show suddenly turned into a serious government thriller for an episode. The catalyst was FBI Agent Page, a stern, no-nonsense federal agent played by Eliza Dushku. She is sent to conduct a background check on Wolowitz for his new job with the Department of Defense. The problem was, she played the part completely straight. She was a serious character from a serious drama who had somehow wandered onto the set of a multi-camera sitcom. There were no jokes, no quirks, no funny moments for her character. She just grilled the guys with a stern face. The clash in tone was jarring. It sucked all the fun out of the episode, turning a show about nerdy friends into a dull interrogation scene. Eliza Dushku is great in action and drama roles, but her appearance on The Big Bang Theory was a perfect example of a guest star who simply did not understand the assignment. A serious character on a comedy show is a bad mix. But what about a character who is so annoying on purpose that he crosses the line from funny annoying to just plain unwatchable? 17. Rob Schneider as Bob on Seinfeld.
Hey, Bob. Bob? Hey, Bobby, over here. Bob.
Elaine Bennies had a lot of terrible coworkers at the different companies she worked for throughout Seinfeld, but none were more irritating than Bob, her new colleague at a company that made catalogs. Played by comedian Rob Schneider, Bob was a character with one defining trait. He was incredibly annoying. He had a smug attitude and a catchphrase where he would mock people by saying their name in a funny voice, like Elena. He was supposed to be the kind of person who thinks he is hilarious, but is actually just obnoxious. The problem is, Rob Schneider played the part a little too well. The character was not funny in his annoyingness. He was just genuinely hard to watch. Every time he was on screen, you just wanted him to go away. His catchphrase was not clever or amusing. It was just grating. The episode he appeared in is considered one of the weaker entries in the show's legendary run, and a big part of that is because the central guest character was so deeply unpleasant. It is a rare case where a character designed to be annoying succeeded a little too much. An annoying coworker is bad. But what about a guest star from a famous comedy troupe who delivers a rare, unfunny performance on one of the most beloved comedies of the modern era? 18. Fred Armisen on Parks and Recreation.
Where are the armed men who come in to take the protesters away? Where are they? This kind of behavior is never tolerated in Boracua. You shout like that, they put you in jail.
Parks and Recreation had one of the best guest star track records in sitcom history. From Paul Rudd to Bill Murray, nearly every celebrity who visited Pawnee was comedy gold. But there was one infamous exception. In Season 2, the show did an episode where Leslie Knope hosts a Parks and Recreation delegation from Pawnee's sister city in Venezuela. The head of the Venezuelan delegation was played by Saturday Night Live star Fred Armisen. The joke was supposed to be that the Venezuelans were condescending and thought their country was a paradise, when in reality, it was a mess. They looked down on Pawnee and insulted everyone. The problem was, it just was not funny. Armisen and the other actors played their parts with a smug, superior attitude that came across as genuinely mean, not comically clueless. There was no charm, no silliness, just a bunch of unpleasant characters being rude. It was a sour note in a show that was famous for its warmth and optimism. For a series with hundreds of hilarious characters, the Venezuelan delegation stands out as a bizarre and memorable failure. A mean-spirited guest spot can ruin an episode. But what about a legendary comedian whose signature voice and style felt completely out of place on a wholesome family show? 19. Gilbert Gottfried on The Cosby Show.
And look, what are these clothes you're wearing? I go into this guy's office. He wears designer sweaters. One of his sweaters costs more than my whole wardrobe.
The Cosby Show was the biggest sitcom of the 1980s, known for its warm, gentle humor and its positive portrayal of the Huxtable family. It was a comfortable, cozy show. That is what made the guest appearance by comedian Gilbert Gottfried so incredibly weird. In a Season 4 episode, Cliff and Claire are thinking about adopting another child. They are visited at their home by a man from the adoption agency, played by Gottfried. If you know Gilbert Gottfried's comedy, you know he has a very unique style. He is famous for his loud, screeching voice and his abrasive personality. And that is exactly what he brought to The Cosby Show. His character yelled every single one of his lines in that iconic, grating voice. He was obnoxious and completely over the top. The performance felt like it was from another planet. It was a surreal and jarring experience to see this loud, cartoonish character sitting on the couch in the quiet, respectable Huxtable living room. It was a bizarre piece of stunt casting that simply did not work and felt completely alien to the show's gentle tone. A loud voice can be jarring. But our final guest star was not known for her voice, but for being a tool-time girl, and her flat performance was so noticeable, she was quickly replaced. 20. Pamela Anderson as Lisa on Home Improvement.
I mean, is my sensitivity being obliterated by my overwhelming masculinity?
I don't think so, Al.
Home Improvement was a smash hit in the 90s, built around the comedy of Tim the Toolman Taylor. A huge part of the show was Tim's show within a show, Tool Time. Every episode, Tim and his co-host Al would be assisted by a tool-time girl. For the first 2 seasons, that role was filled by Lisa, played by a young Pamela Anderson before her Baywatch fame. The role of the tool-time girl was simple: look pretty, hand the host a tool, and smile. But even with that low bar, Anderson's performance felt stiff and lifeless. She delivered her few lines with very little energy or charisma. She had almost no comedic chemistry with Tim Allen or Richard Karn. Truth be told, she was not an actress yet, and it showed. The producers must have noticed, because after 2 seasons, she was quietly written off the show with the explanation that she left to become a paramedic, She was replaced by a new tool-time girl, Heidi, played by Debbie Dunning, who had much better comedic timing and chemistry with the cast. Heidi stayed for the rest of the show's run, while Lisa became a forgotten footnote in the show's long history.